Okay, hi everybody again. Welcome to the segment on research questions. I am in general not going to go over the Maxwell chapter. I think it's pretty well laid out. It may feel a little bit a little less self-evident to you than the previous chapter did, the information in it. Read it. If you need to read the sections a couple of times just to kind of feel comfortable with them, that's fine. In this chapter, he makes distinctions between different kinds of questions in different ways. They're important distinctions. They do matter. But I don't want you to worry about them. Okay? I want you to read it. I want you to think about, as you're reading, think about, okay, what does this have to do with my study? How might the kinds of things I've been thinking about, I mean, you've been thinking about research questions since probably last fall with Mary Haefele. I know you were thinking about research questions in a very general, broad way with Alice. We're narrowing the funnel here, okay? Be thinking about what you might want to do, again, in a very general way. Don't worry about having it defined right now. That's what we're going to be working on the next couple of weeks. As you're reading each of those sections, just kind of think, well, what can I take from this that might be helpful to me? There are a couple of things that I do want to point out, though. The first thing I want to reiterate to you guys, we talked about it this summer, we're doing qualitative studies here and not quantitative studies. And so in the section of the chapter where he talks about variance and process questions, that's terminology. The way he explains it, I think, is pretty good. He explains the variance questions as a kind of as in mathematical terms. How much do things change? How much do things vary? So if you ask a question like, what's the impact of creativity curriculum on students' achievement in other non-arts classes? You're looking at how much, basically, you think, if you ask the question then, okay, well, how would I figure that out? Well, I could look at their test scores in these other non-arts classes. So I'd have to look at their test scores before the creativity curriculum and then after, and I'd be looking for how much those changed. So you're looking at a variance there from pre-condition, which would, we'll call it condition, which would be the creativity curriculum. Pre-creativity curriculum, add the creativity curriculum, post-creativity curriculum, what's the difference? That's variance. We're not really doing those kinds of studies. We're not set up in our department to do that kind of study. We don't have the kind of time that we would need to do that kind of study also. And you'd also have to take some other classes in statistical measurements, and you don't want to do that, I'm sure. Anyway, what we're doing is qualitative studies. So you're looking for qualities that are inherent in situations. So a lot of these are descriptive studies. You're going to be describing what happens. You're going to be describing what things are like, either based on your observations or other people telling you what they think, you know. So I just want you to keep that in mind. These are qualitative studies, not quantitative studies, so you don't want to be asking questions like how much, any kind of numbers kinds of questions, all right? All right, so we're going to be, the purposes, he talks about purposes of research questions. For us, at this point in time, these research questions are going to do a couple different things. One is they're going to help really focus what your study is going to be about, and they're also going to tell us how you're going to carry the study out. This week is the what's the study about question. We're going to call that the main research question. You'll each develop only one main research question. You're going to develop that by going through Maxwell's exercise 4.1. Doing the memos in chapter 4 and then carrying out exercise 4.1. There are 6 sections in 4.1. You're only going to do the first 4 this week. Please do not go on to 5 and 6. Those are going to help us develop the second kind of question, which we're going to call the sub-questions. And those are the procedural, methodological kinds of questions. And I have a little bit different way of doing that than Maxwell does, so I'd rather you did not go ahead. Alrighty? So that main research question is effectively going to be a broad, open-ended question that is targeted to what you want to gain insight into or learn more about within the conceptual framework that you're working with. Don't worry about, oh, I've got to get these conceptual framework keywords into my main research question. You don't. Don't worry about that. But let me give you a good example of a main research question for a qualitative study. In what ways do middle school students' cultural sources impact their imagery development in a unit of study on identity? Tells you what they're interested in, middle school students' development of imagery around identity, and how their cultural sources impact that. Okay? But you notice those first three words I used. In what ways? That really sets a question up nicely. I've given you a few of those in the assignment post. So in what ways, how might, what happens when. These are really general openers for a question that allow you a lot of flexibility within a study, a lot of flexibility conceptually in your approach. The thing to keep in mind as you're doing exercise 4 is, what do you want to gain insight into? What do you want to learn about? Remember, don't ask yourself, what do I want to answer? Ask yourself, what do I want to learn? Okay, what do I want to learn about? All right. Also, Maxwell gives you 3 different pairings of kinds of questions: generalizing and particularizing questions, instrumentalist and realist questions, and variance and process questions. Don't worry too much about the differences between those. I think that the things that are important about the differences between those, we're going to work through as we workshop your main research question in the responses to the posts. The one difference that is really pretty critical is the last pairing, variance and process. Pay pretty close attention to that, because you're not going to really be writing variance questions. You'll be writing process questions. And that word process, the way it sounds a little misleading, but the way that he's using it makes sense in terms of what we're going to be doing. Okay, so the assignment is posted, but remember, you're only doing 4.1 through section 4, and then you're going to be stopping. This segment is over, and the next one, I'll just be going through the assignment and clarifying a couple things there. Okay, thanks.